Hello everyone, this is Logan59XP here for another episode of the Nin-Cast here on December 6th of 2023, and today we're here to talk about the Game Awards, predictions for the 2023 upcoming event that is happening tomorrow. And we're here to talk about it because if you've been following the channel for even a not that long amount of time, you'll probably will have noticed at this point that talking about the Game Awards before it happens has become kind of a tradition at this point, so we're here to do it again for 2023. So, first things first, let's talk about what's different this year before we get to all the actual, reveals and awards and stuff. So, first things first is, according to Jeff Keighley, they are dropping the world premiere tag. This doesn't really change anything. It just means that now it won't say world premiere because they want everything that they have the show to be, quote, on the same level. Or something like that. So, say what you will about that, but yeah. So they're dropping the world premiere tag. They're still going to have new stuff. They got new games. They got new stuff, obviously. But they're not calling them world premieres anymore. So, I don't know. It doesn't really change anything, but that is a difference. And the second thing, and this doesn't really affect the Game Awards really themselves that much, but of course, Jeff Keighley, after what happened at the end of the last Game Awards last year, he mentioned increased security so people can't just waltz up onto the stage like that one Bill Clinton guy did last time. It became basically the most notable thing that happened during the entire show for a lot of people. That and was that the one where Christopher Judge, the voice of Kratos in the newer games, didn't he have like that long 8-minute speech or something? And that was also kind of a meme. But yeah, the Bill Clinton guy, so to speak. Yeah, that was the big meme coming out of last year's Game Awards. And it happened at the very very end too. They had the FromSoft guys on stage when Elden Ring won Game of the Year and all that, but. Anyway, so those are the two main things that are different this year. Is they're dropping the world premiere tag, but they're still going to have world premieres. They're just not going to call them that. And increased security so another Bill Clinton scenario, so to speak, doesn't happen again. Alrighty then, so let's go ahead and just get this out of the way. Let's talk about the kind of pre-existing controversies. Now, for the last few years, really for a while, but I would say particularly from 2020 onward, there's been more and more controversy surrounding the awards. Now, of course, in 2020, we had The Last of Us 2 being nominated for 8 or 9 awards, and it won 7 of them, and that was really controversial, But then we had, Elden Ring win last year and stuff like that. So it's kind of I don't know, that's a whole other conversation. But point is, that whole thing. But there's more to it than that. That there's more to the obligatory, this game's totally going to win because obviously they're all going to vote for it and they're not going to vote for the game that deserves to win. That's a whole other conversation. But anyways, so first things first. This has already been talked about. This is by no means new news at this point. But the whole Dave the Diver. For those of you who don't know, Dave the Diver is this it's non-indie game, that's the whole point of the controversy, but it's a game that resembles, the kind of the stereotypical pixelated low poly look that indie games are kind of associated with now. And it was nominated by the Game Awards for Best, quote, independent game, despite the fact that the developer is owned by Nexon, which is a company that probably most people here in the West, at least, probably have never heard of. But apparently they're a really big company over in Asia, I think. And they're they're worth $2 billion or whatever the number was. I saw people throwing around. So the point is, that was a whole controversy of, Dave the Diver is not actually an independent game because it's owned by Nexon, yet it's being nominated for Best Independent Game just because it was made by a small team and because it looks like an indie game, basically. But that's a whole other debate of, But anyways, another thing is Destiny 2 is being nominated for Best Community Support, which a lot of people saw is really awkward considering all the recent firings that went on at Bungie over the last couple of months, including a lot of the community team over there. So it's kind of that's kind of awkward. And then really outside of that, it's basically just, your obligatory, wow, this game didn't get nominated, wow, it got so snubbed, all that stuff. For example, the most notable one being Final Fantasy 16 did not get nominated for Game of the Year, which I will say is honestly kind of surprising. I thought that was a guarantee like earlier this year, like, oh, that's totally gonna be like nominated. It won't win, but it'll be nominated. But no, it's nominated for other categories, and we'll get to those when we get to them. But yeah, that's kind of weird. So yeah, no Final Fantasy 16 for Game of the Year. Also, Starfield is not nominated for Game of the Year, so that's, I mean, I'm not shocked, but there was a part of me that thought, I kind of was like 50-50 on whether or not Starfield would be nominated, because on the one hand, it's the big Microsoft game of the year, and it is one of the big games of the year, so it'd be kind of weird for it to not be nominated. But also, the game, at least the game's reputation, as far as I can tell, I've never played Starfield, I've never played any of the Bethesda games, Elder Scrolls, Fallout, none of them. You know, one of these days I'll get around to it. One of these days I'll get around to trying, at the very least, Elder Scrolls. I don't know about Fallout as much, although I have played a little bit of Fallout 4 back in the day, but anyways, it's a whole other conversation. Point is, I have no real opinion on Starfield one way or the other, but the perception around the game is not the greatest. It's not terrible, but it's not good either. And it's kind of in this like mixed is the best way to describe Starfield's reputation. Is it's very mixed right now, for a variety of reasons, both the game itself and also just, of course, there was that whole controversy with, AMD's blocking DLSS, and that was a whole, debate and controversy. And then, of course, now we have DLSS, so it doesn't matter. And there was, of course, all those mods, and then there was that one guy that was selling DLSS mods, but it had DRM in it, and people were pissed about that. And I'm getting way off track. Point is, I'd imagine the main reason why Starfield wasn't nominated is simply because of its mixed reputation. That's my guess. However, it is like Final Fantasy 4. Did I say 14? I may have said 14 earlier, by the way. Apologies. 16. Final Fantasy 16. Like FF16, it is nominated for other categories, just not Game of the Year. And while I know Final Fantasy 16 definitely has its detractors, particularly for, its action-y gameplay, the reception of Final Fantasy 16, I feel like, was better than Starfield at the very least. Even though, again, I haven't played either game, so I don't really have an opinion on it. But that's just the perception. The perception I get is FF16's reputation is much better than Starfield's overall. But, again, you decide on that one. So yeah, and there's probably a couple other ones in there. I think there's a couple indie games that people complained weren't nominated or something, but there's other stuff that also wasn't nominated for certain categories that people weren't thrilled with. But that's just kind of but that's not really special or unique at this point, because that happens like every year at this point. There's always some game that's not nominated for a certain category, and people are annoyed that it's not nominated. Like, for example, Xenoblade, I think, got what was it, back in 2017? Like, people were like, why didn't Xenoblade get nominated for Best Music or Best RPG or Best something? And it didn't. And then, was Xenoblade 3, because last year was Xenoblade 3, I think Xenoblade 3 was nominated for Best Music last year. It didn't win it, though. I don't think it won anything last year. Anyway, that gets into the whole, that's a whole other conversation, but point is, the obligatory, wow, my favorite game didn't get nominated for X category, that just comes with that's not really a unique thing, but I'll throw it in with the controversies pile just for the heck of it. And that's pretty much all I really know as far as controversies. If there's another controversy I've missed, then apologies, but those are all the ones I'm aware of. So Dave the Diver, Destiny 2, and your obligatory Starfield didn't get nominated for Game of the Year. FF16 didn't get nominated for Game of the Year. This game didn't get nominated for music. This game didn't get nominated for that. And that's kind of that. And I guess one other thing. This isn't really a controversy too much, but I'll throw it in at the last second anyway. Resident Evil 4. We'll get to this when we talk about Game of the Year. But Resident Evil 4, the remake of the classic from 2005, I think. That's another game I've never played. Yes, I've never played Resident Evil 4, even though it's one of the most famous games of all time. I know, it's on the big bucket list of games that are like really notable that I need to play one of these days. But anyways, but yeah, so Resident Evil 4 Remake is nominated for Game of the Year. And while this hasn't drawn any, like, huge controversy, it has brought into question, should it be nominated for Game of the Year? Because it's a remake. And it's not like with the Final Fantasy VII remakes, where it's a new game. No, like, Resident Evil 4 Remake it's not a one-to-one remake, as far as I know, but it's a lot closer to being a one-to-one remake than, say, the FF7 remake, well, part 1 of Remake was to the original version of that. But that's simply because, even ignoring, the whole whisper, all the whispers at the end or whatever, even ignoring the whole, like, last bit of FF7 Remake part 1, even if we ignore that, even if we were just viewing the rest of the game without the ghosts or whatever, the difference between the original game and Remake is so huge because you're going from PS1 to PS4. Whereas you're going with Resident Evil 4, you're going from PS2, well, the GameCube, because it was originally a GameCube game, a part of like the, what was it, like the Capcom Triforce, like, deal or whatever? I forget exactly how that worked, but there was like a couple of Capcom games that were like a part of this Triforce, like, thing that I think it was called or whatever back in the day. And then, of course, eventually, and Resident Evil 4 was one of them, along with, like, Beautiful Joe and stuff. And then eventually they got ported to other platforms. But anyways, we're going from a GameCube game to a PS4 game. Because remember, Resident Evil 4, even though most people probably played it on PS5, Series X, or PC, it was also released on PS4. Not Xbox One, but PS4, which means the game was designed around the PS4 to some extent. So we're just going to say PS4. And obviously the jump between the GameCube and the PS4 is big, but it's not the earth-shattering, gargantuan jump from PS1 to PS4. It's not even close. I don't know. Again, this is a whole separate topic that we could do probably a whole video on. But point is, should a remake be nominated for Game of the Year when it's not a new game? And also, like, how much of the remake has to be different than the original to even remotely be considered qualifying? Because again, if you want to, like, okay, so for example, let's talk about a recent remake that just came out, Super Mario RPG. That is a 1-to-1 remake of the original. It's the exact same game, just with better graphics. Whereas FF7 Remake is a brand new game with a completely different combat system that follows the same story as the original, for the most part. And again, the jump from PS1 to PS4 is gargantuan. Honestly, the jump between PS1 and PS4 is way bigger than the jump from Super Nintendo to Switch. But then again, that's also because Super Mario RPG was a faithful remake where they maintained the isometric 2D perspective and didn't make it like a full, proper 3D game like it would be like a Paper Mario or something. But anyways, my point is Resident Evil 4 being nominated, to some people may be controversial just because it's a remake and not a brand new game or whatever. But anyways, so let's talk about the awards before we talk about all the reveals. So I do have a list here of all the different categories. I'm not going to go over all of them. Obviously, we're going to be focusing on the big boy, Game of the Year, but we'll go over a couple of the others first. So I'll start from the bottom of the list and I'll go up. So for example, again, I'm not going to cover every single category, just the ones that really stand out. So for example, in most anticipated game, we have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, aka Part 2 of the Remake Trilogy, which is coming out in February. Then we have Hades 2. I completely forgot about Hades 2. Wasn't that announced, like, at the Game Awards, like, a year or two? I think it wasn't a year ago. I think it was 2 years ago in 2021, but I could be wrong about that. Maybe that'll be here. I actually completely forgot about that. But we have Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, aka Yakuza 8, the next mainline Yakuza game, even though they're not calling it Yakuza anymore because they're going back to the original Japanese name of Like a Dragon, even though I personally don't like that because Yakuza has become such a cemented name, but that's a whole other conversation. But point is, yeah, so basically Yakuza 8. That's on there. Star Wars Outlaws, which is the new Star Wars game from Massive and Ubisoft, yet Massive being the guys behind the Division series. And then Tekken 8, which is, well, Tekken 8, of course, by Bandai Namco. Of those games, I feel like the one that will win by default almost is Rebirth. that may be my bias talking, because that's the game on that list that I care about the most, without question. But I feel like Hades was a really big game when it came out. Because, like, okay, so you know how for the past, like, 5 or so years, there's been that one, most of the time is an indie game that just blows up, right? You know, like in 2014, it was Five Nights at Freddy's. In 2015, it was Undertale. In 2016, I don't remember if there was anything in 2016. But then, like, a couple years later, we had Hollow Knight. I think it was, like, 2018 or 2019. Like, you know, Hollow Knight was a big one. And then, yeah, like Hades, I think, came out in 2020. That was, like, the big indie game of that year. You know, like, there's that one game that comes out and just dominates, like, you know, everyone knows about it. Even if you've never played it, you have heard of it. And yeah, I'm not sure if there is one of those this year. Actually, no, I think there is one. I think it's even on the list. You know, not on this list, but on one of the other categories. I think that it's what's it called? Pizza Tower. I've never played it, but I've seen it, and I know it's really popular. So that might be, you know, the new quote popular indie game this year. But I'm not entirely sure. But I know that I've definitely seen that game pop up in my feed every once in a while. I've never played it. But I know it exists. I know it came out this year, and I know it's really popular with a certain group of people. So it might follow in that, you know, Undertale, Hollow Knight, Hades trend of being the indie game of the year in terms of, like, the big new one or whatever. But I'm not sure if Pizza Tower is quite on that level. But again, I don't know anything about Pizza Tower. I have a very, very surface level knowledge of it. But I know it came out this year, but anyways, so yeah, most anticipated game, I think FF7 is going to win by default, basically, because it's FF7. I'm sorry, it just will. I mean, that's what I would have wanted. I mean, not that this is an award that really matters. It's such a, like, frivolous award, but yeah, FF7 Rebirth. Best Adaptation, I think this is a new category. I could be wrong on that. This includes Castlevania Nocturne, which I believe is a spin-off of the critically acclaimed Castlevania series from Netflix. Then, of course, there's the Gran Turismo movie, for those of you that remember that came out this year. Then we have, of course, the Last of Us HBO series, the Mario movie, obviously, and then probably the most obscure of all of them, because of the platform it released on, Twisted Metal. You know, the classic PlayStation series? Yeah, well, that actually got a series on Peacock this year. And that right there tells you exactly why no one talks about it. Because it was on Peacock, and no one uses Peacock, really. So, you know, people knew about Gran Turismo because it was a feature-length movie. People knew about The Last of Us because it was The Last of Us, and because it was on HBO, and because they pushed it a lot. But Twisted Metal kind of got buried. I mean, I knew about it, but probably not that many others, unless it was shown on the PS5 dashboard. Because, of course, whenever a PlayStation-related product comes out, they'll put it on the PS5 dashboard. They did it when Uncharted came out last year. Yeah, remember the Uncharted movie with Tom Holland? Yeah, that movie existed. But yeah, when Last of Us came out, you know, they plastered it all over the PS5 dashboard, right? Obviously. I mean, why wouldn't you? You know, wow, a Sony console is promoting a Sony TV series. I'm totally shocked. But, well, especially one that's based on a game, you know, of PlayStation. But anyways, I mean, which one's gonna win this? You know, I know it's a cliche, and I know I kind of mentioned earlier how, like, people kind of are annoyed that, you know, people were annoyed a couple years ago when The Last of Us won all of those awards. But honestly, which one's gonna win? It's gonna be The Last of Us. It's Last of Us Part 1, technically, because it's Season 1. Season 2, which isn't out yet, will be based on Last of Us Part 2. So that will be a whole conversation whenever that happens. And it in Season 2 gets nominated for Best Adaptation in, like, 2024, 2025, and then people are going to lose their minds over that. But anyways, which one's going to win? Probably Last of Us. No one really talked about Gran Turismo, and no one really even knows that the Twisted Metal series even existed. I haven't seen the Castlevania show, so I don't know how good that is, but I've heard good things about the series it's based on, just the regular Castlevania show from a few years ago on Netflix. I've heard good things about that. And, of course, the Mario movie did insanely well. Insanely well. But Best Adaptation, I'm not sure if it deserves that. It's a fun movie. I enjoyed it, but Best Adaptation. I'm not sure about that. I mean, now granted, the see, that depends on your definition of adaptation. By best adaptation, do you mean the best movie/show of the group, or do you mean the best adaptation as what movie or show is the best strict adaptation of the medium of the IP it's based on? Because the Mario movie is technically a good adaptation from a pure adaptation perspective, but is it the best piece of media, the best piece of cinema of that group? I don't think anyone would say that it is. So I don't know. However you want to classify best adaptation, Last of Us is going to win that one. And even ignoring the the Game Awards are biased or the Last of Us, even if we ignored that, I think it would still win. Just because it probably is the best produced adaptation of the bunch. But anyways. So let's go ahead and skip up to best multiplayer game. So we got Baldur's Gate 3. This is going to be a pattern, probably to the surprise of absolutely nobody that's been paying attention to the internet at all for the past 4 or 5 months. But Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be nominated for a ton of categories because it's Baldur's Gate 3. It's okay, you know how I said that maybe Pizza Tower is that one big... No. Baldur's Gate 3. Okay, it's not an indie... Well, okay, this gets into a whole other conversation. Well, Valerian Studios is technically independent, so therefore they are technically an indie game. Well, let's forget that whole nonsense for a second. Okay. Baldur's Gate 3 is not an Undertale or a Five Nights at Freddy's or a Pizza Tower or a Hollow Knight, where it's very clearly a, quote, indie game. That's a very small... No. It's not that. It's basically a, quote, AAA game. But, the standout game of 2023 is Baldur's Gate 3. It's the fan favorite. Like how Elden Ring was the fan favorite last year. And again, we'll talk about Baldur's Gate 3 some more once we get to, of course, the coveted game of the year. But, yeah, so Baldur's Gate 3, Diablo 4, a game that has had a mixed reputation at best, as far as I can tell. Or at least in regards to its, the game itself... definitely has its detractors, but the most of the complaints I hear about Diablo 4 are regarding, the microtransactions and all that stuff, but yeah. So then we have Party Animals, which is a game I do know about, but because it's probably the least known game of the bunch, it probably stands no chance at winning. Street Fighter 6, yeah. It's a fighting game, yeah. And then we have Mario Wonder. Mario Wonder. I don't know about that one. I haven't played Mario Wonder yet, by the way, in case you're wondering. It's a game I definitely want to play, but I'm not in a rush to play it. It's a new 2D Mario, which is cool, but it's also a new 2D Mario. I'm not rushing to play it, although I do want to play it eventually. We'll see what happens with that. But anyways, Mario Wonder. See, I haven't played any of these games, so I don't really have an opinion on any of them. But if we're talking about which one's going to win, I'm going to say Baldur's Gate 3. Simply because it's Baldur's Gate 3. I'll just leave it at that, I guess. Alrighty then, so let's go ahead and let's see. So best racing game. It's got all the various racing games. Don't really have much to say about that. Best sim/strategy games. This includes the Advanced Wars remake that was delayed for a year because of the Ukraine war. Then we have City Skylines 2, Company of Heroes 3, Fire Emblem Engage, and Pikmin 4. Actually, Pikmin 4 is a game I know people complained about not getting more nominations. That's a game that was never realistically going to be Game of the Year material because, come on, it's Pikmin 4. It has a fan base, but it's not a Mario or a Zelda fan base, let's be real. So it was never going to get nominated for Game of the Year. But anyways, it's kind of weird. I guess it's kind of weird that they crammed sim and strategy together into one category. But yeah, again, I haven't played any of these either. But if I were just to guess which one would win, honestly, I'm not sure. This one really could go to maybe not Company of Heroes 3. That's probably... okay, Company of Heroes 3 and Advanced Wars don't stand a chance. City Skylines is big. And, of course, Fire Emblem and Pikmin are known franchises. Fire Emblem Engage is a game that I haven't heard particularly great things about. it looks and runs way better than Three Houses, and that's because Three Houses was made by Koei Tecmo, and Koei Tecmo are like, they're not Game Freak tiers of like bad at like optimization or whatever, but like they're not great. Like Three Houses does not run great, even when you're just walking around the school, and that's because it's the Koei Tecmo engine. And you can tell by looking at it, because it has that Koei Tecmo like anime engine look. You know, it's the same engine they used for the other two Fire Emblem Warriors games, the Hyrule Warriors games. They also used it for Persona 5 Strikers when that came out. Even though Persona 5 Strikers is way more of a proper Persona game than a Dynasty Warriors game, but that's a whole other conversation. But anyways, which game is going to win? Honestly, it's probably going to be City Skylines or... Pikmin 4 is definitely better received than Engage, but Engage is a more... But Fire Emblem is more visible, because Pikmin was dead for, like, a decade, so, like, I don't know. You know, I'm going to say City Skylines or Pikmin 4. Preemptively? I'm not sure. I'm going to throw a curveball and say... See, if we're going purely on reception, City Skylines 2 is a game that has been controversial because of its bad optimization. And I know people have talked about that a lot this year when it comes to PC ports in particular. But the difference with City Skylines 2 is that the developers literally said the game is not in the state they wanted it to be. So they basically admitted that the game isn't, quote-unquote, ready as far as optimization is concerned. So that's definitely tanked its reputation somewhat. But the game itself, I don't know what the reception of that is. It's probably good, because City Skylines, the first game, from what I heard, was good. But it could be either one. We'll just move on, because this video is going to get way too long if I sit here and ramble on like all of these. So let's kind of blitz through some of these. Okay, so best family game. This is a category that is traditionally dominated by Nintendo titles, but this time around there's actually 3 non-Nintendo titles. We have Disney Illusion World, which came out earlier this year on the Switch. You may recognize it from being in the last couple of directs. Party Animals, again. Pikmin 4, again. Sonic Superstars, which of course is the Sonic 2D game that came out basically right when Mario Wonder came out. And then, of course, Mario Wonder. Which one's going to win that? Probably Mario Wonder, because it's Mario Wonder. There, moving on. My best fighting game. God of Rock, don't know that game. Mortal Kombat 1. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawls 2. Yeah, that game came out. Pocket Bravery, never heard of that. And then Street Fighter 6. It's definitely not going to be the 2 games I've never heard of, and it's definitely not going to be Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl 2, which I don't even know what the reception of that is. My guess, yeah, it's either going to be Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter. It's going to be one of those 2. I'm going to say Street Fighter 6. I don't know why, I just feel it in my gut for some reason. I have no basis in that whatsoever. That's just what I feel. Best role-playing game, aka best RPG. Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 16. So yep, see, Final Fantasy 16's in there. Lies of P, which is of course the popular Pinocchio-based like Soulsborne game that came out earlier this year. Sea of Stars, which is okay. That Sea of Stars, that's the big indie game of the year. Okay. Yeah, it's not Pizza Tower. Pizza Tower is a game I've heard of, but people have talked about Sea of Stars way more. Yeah, no. Sea of Stars is the indie game of 2023. Okay. In terms of, like, the one everyone's heard of. And then we have Starfield. Which one's going to win that? Honestly, I could go to any of them. This is probably the first category where, like, I think all of them have a genuine shot at winning. I haven't played any of them, so I can't really say personally. But in my gut, who do I think is going to win? I'm going to say... Oh, God, this is a tough one, honestly. I want to say Final Fantasy 16, because I feel like Final Fantasy 16 has to win something. It has to win something. And if it's going to win anything, being Best RPG feels like the most obvious one. And Baldur's Gate, while obviously being very popular, like Baldur's Gate again is nominated for a bunch of other categories that are like more important, quote unquote. So like it not winning this one is not like the biggest thing in the world. Sea of Stars was popular when it came out, although people don't talk about it as much now. And of course, Starfield is of course a big game too. But again, the reputation amongst that game is kind of mixed. And then Lies of P is also really popular, although I'm not sure if I'd call that an RPG necessarily. But again, I haven't played it. All I know is it's very much in, the Souls, kind of, way of gameplay and stuff. But, honestly, I'm just going to, I think, okay. I can't tell you who will win this, but I can tell you who it will not be. Probably. I'm sorry. I don't think Starfield stands a chance. Of those 5 games, the one with the, quote, worst reputation is probably going to be Starfield. So I think by default, it probably will not win that category. I don't know what other categories it's nominated for. This may be the only one it's nominated for. In fact, let me go ahead and scroll really quickly. Is it nominated for literally anything else? Or is that like the one category it's in? No, that's the only category it's in, I think. Ooh. It's kind of rough. That's rough, buddy. That's genuinely like rough on Starfield. The big Xbox game, the big Bethesda game of the year, and it gets nominated for one category. And not even game of the year. But again, that's a whole other conversation. Again, I have no personal opinion on Starfield one way or the other. But going purely off of reputation, it's probably not going to win the one category it's nominated for. Just basing it solely on reputation. I know that the Game Awards is not strictly a popularity contest. But still, I don't know. I don't think it's going to win that. I think any of those others have a genuine shot. Baldur's Gate, obviously, because it's Baldur's Gate. Final Fantasy, of course, because it's Final Fantasy. Lies of P, because it's pretty popular. And Sea of Stars is definitely popular as well. Although I think Lies of P would probably satisfy more people than Sea of Stars winning. But that's just, again, my completely outside perspective of that. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. It's not going to be Starfield. That's all I can really say about that one. Okay, next, Best Action Adventure Game, Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake 2 is also being nominated a lot. Tears of the Kingdom. This is our first Tears of the Kingdom category. Spider-Man 2, which I have not played yet. Resident Evil 4, and then Jedi Survivor. That is... I think all of those have a shot. Even Jedi Survivor. Jedi Survivor was kind of torn apart for its performance issues when it first came out, and while it has improved since then, it's still not great. But the game itself was received well. It was just performance, as opposed to Starfield, where people complained about the performance and the game itself, whereas Jedi Survivor is people liked the game, the underlying game, they just had a problem with the performance. And of course, Resident Evil 4, Spider-Man 2, Tears of the Kingdom, Alan Wake 2, those are all critically acclaimed games anyway, so. Honestly, it could be any of them, but if you were to blindfold me right now, and I were to throw a dart at the wall and to see what it lands on, my bet is I'm going to say, just completely random, Spider-Man 2. That's not solid or anything. Again, I haven't even played the game yet, although I do want to, but... Well, I'm just going to say Spider-Man 2. That's my just random prediction for that category. Okay, Best Action Game. Armored Core 6. This is, of course, going to be... This is a bit of a cult hit on this list, for sure. It's nominated for, I think, a couple other categories as well. But again, not Game of the Year. Not that it would have stood a chance anyway. This game obviously has a lot going for it, simply because it's a FromSoft game. And, of course, after the huge success of Elden Ring last year, and, of course, Elden Ring winning last year... Yeah, it definitely has got something going for it there. Although, and I heard the game was good, but not that many people have really played it, though, in comparison to, like, an Elden Ring. But again, they're two different genres, but, maybe the From Software-ness would have helped with some crossover. I think Armored Core 6, did do well. It just didn't do Elden Ring numbers, obviously. But anyways, yeah. Armored Core 6, Dead Island 2, the game that took, like, forever to come out, Ghost Runner 2, Hi-Fi Rush, and Remnant 2. Okay, so I can tell you what game I want to win, even though I haven't played any of the others. Hi-Fi Rush is a game that I think definitely deserves to win at least one. Hi-Fi Rush is such a unique, fun little game that I absolutely think if you haven't played, you should go play it. It's this really cool... It feels like a game that could have been on, like, the GameCube or, like, the Wii. And I mean that like in like a really good way. Like it's genuinely like a really fun little game with a really cool art style. It's not very long, but it's a fun little game, and it's on Game Pass, of course, because it was made by Tango Gameworks, aka Bethesda, so aka Microsoft. So if you haven't played it, it's out. It's been out for almost a year at this point. That game is nominated for a couple other categories, and I definitely think it deserves to win at least one of them. For sure. That game is actually a really fun little game. And if they ever did like a proper DLC, I know they did a couple updates, but if they ever did like a proper DLC expansion, I would totally play that. And if we ever get a sequel at some point, I'll definitely be playing that as well. But yeah, so Hi-Fi Rush is the game just because it's Hi-Fi. But here's the thing though, it's best action game. I wouldn't describe Hi-Fi Rush as an action game. It's more of a platformer than an action game. I mean, it's part platformer. I don't know. It's not platformer in the sense that like Mario is a platformer or Sonic is a platformer, but I don't know. I feel like that's the closest thing I would describe it as. It's kind of like a platformer, but it also has the combat. I don't know. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to say Hi-Fi Rush for this specific category. So for this specific category, I'm just going to say, again, I haven't played it, but we'll just say Armored Core 6. Okay? We'll talk about Hi-Fi Rush for a different category. Best VR AR game. This one I have absolutely no opinion on. It's got Horizon Call of the Mountain. It's got the Resident Evil Village update, and those are the only two in there that I really know that much. And there's also Gran Turismo 7. I got nothing to say about that one, so we'll just move on. Best mobile game. The only two in here that I know people will actually know is Ever Crisis, which I haven't played yet, and Honkai Star Rail, which if you don't know what that game is at this point, it's made by the guys that made Genshin Impact, and as you can imagine, it's very, very popular, so I mean, is it a mobile game though? I mean, Genshin Impact is the game mobile enough to be a mobile game? Like, if that makes any weird sense. I don't know. I don't think of Genshin or Honkai Star Rail as being like a mobile game. I think of it as every platform game that maybe leans into the mobile elements a little more. I don't know. But it's technically a gacha game, so I guess it's mobile. I don't know. Either way, it's either going to be that or Ever Crisis. But Ever Crisis is also not really a new game. I mean, it's like a remastered compilation of other games, but also with gacha elements. I don't know. I'm going to say Honkai Star Rail is going to win that one. There's also a couple other games, but the only two that stand any chance are Ever Crisis and Star Rail, so I'm going to say Honkai Star Rail just because it's Honkai Star Rail. Ever Crisis is not its own thing by enough to probably win. That's going to be my completely random whatever. Best community support. We talked about the whole thing with Destiny 2. I'm not going to go over that again. Baldur's Gate, Cyberpunk, Destiny, Final Fantasy 14 this time, not 16. And then No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky, the whole, how they rose from the ashes and how they managed to be one of the few games that turned around a disastrous launch into being something pretty good. People have talked about that to death. I haven't played the game, so I can't speak to it, but people have talked about that whole how it rise from the ashes thing 1,000 times, so it makes sense that it's nominated, although it's probably been nominated a couple of times before. Final Fantasy 14, obviously very popular, very beloved. Destiny 2 is a game that is, again, I've played some Destiny 2 here and there, but never remotely seriously. I basically just boot up the game, walk around the world, and shoot at things for like 30 minutes, and then I'll close the game. Like I barely have played Destiny in the grand scheme of things. But I know Destiny 2 itself has definitely had its fair share of controversy over the last couple of years for a variety of things, like the whole vaulting thing where they were like removing parts of the game and vaulting them or whatever. Then, of course, there's the whole recent thing with the firings and a bunch of other stuff, like the microtransactions, of course. But best community support, again, Baldur's Gate, very, 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 very popular, but I'm going to say Cyberpunk, simply because Cyberpunk, it's not No Man's Sky levels, but Cyberpunk is a game that when it came out, a lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people had problems with it. And in 2020, it was one of the most, quote, reviled games of the year. But over time, it slowly began to turn its reputation around. And now, at the end of 2023, 3 years later, with all the updates and the fixes, and of course the new Phantom Liberty DLC, CD Projekt Red has managed to turn around Cyberpunk's reputation. It may not be considered one of the greats in the same way that Witcher 3 was, but it's now gone from being a reviled game to a game that people at the very least think is okay, if not pretty decent, or good even in some cases. I don't know. I mean, again, I haven't played Cyberpunk, so I don't got an opinion on it, but CD Projekt Red managed to turn the game around. I'd say. So, but then again, a lot of people would say, "Oh, but all their previous shenanigans, does that really, I don't know." As for who's actually going to win, I think it's going to be either Cyberpunk or Baldur's Gate, but it could be either one on that. Best ongoing game: Apex, Cyberpunk, FF14, Fortnite, Genshin Impact. It could be any of them, honestly. Although Cyberpunk is not a live service game. All those other games are live service games. But Cyberpunk is not. It's just a regular game that just happened to be updated over and over and over again. And got a DLC expansion. But DLC expansion is not the same thing as live service. It's not going to be Apex. And it's probably not going to be Genshin Impact, I don't think. Genshin Impact is popular, obviously, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to win that either. I'm going to say... I'm going to say FF14 or Cyberpunk. Moving on. We're spending a lot of time on these. We still haven't even talked about the reveals yet. We're like 40 minutes in, but who cares at this point? Let's do it. What if this video is like an hour and 30 minutes long? Who cares? No one's gonna watch this anyway, because I'm uploading this at like the last second, like I always do for these, because it's so easy to put off recording these until I absolutely need to put them out if I want any chance of these getting any kind of views whatsoever. And this video is probably going to get like 10 views by the time it actually happens. But you know what? Whatever. It is what it is. And hey, if you're still watching this, then very much thank you for sticking by through all my little ramblings here and for listening. So, yeah. But anyways. Oh boy. We still have a bunch more categories to get through. And then we have to talk about the reveals. And then we got to talk about Nintendo stuff. Whether that's going to happen. Anyways. Okay. Best debut indie game. Cocoon. Never heard of it. Dredge. Actually, I think I have heard of that. Barely, though. Pizza Tower. Mentioned that earlier. Venba. Never heard of it. And Viewfinder. Never heard of it. Probably going to be Pizza Tower, simply because that's the game I've heard of the most, and it's the one that I think is the most popular. So that one, I guess. Best independent game. This is where we come back to the whole Dave the Diver thing from earlier. Yeah, Cocoon again. Dave the Diver. Dredge. Sea of Stars. Viewfinder. Sea of Stars, okay, if Sea of Stars or Dave the Diver are the only two that probably stand a chance. But Dave the Diver also has that whole, it's not really an indie game thing. So I guess Sea of Stars, if we're going strictly off of what's actually independent. So yeah, Sea of Stars then, I guess. Games for Impact. I don't know any of the games, so I got nothing to say. Moving on. Best Performance. Idris Elba in Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty. This person as this person in Alan Wake 2. Yuri Lowenthal as Spider-Man 2, of course. This guy as Cal in Jedi Survivor, who was also in, of course, Jedi Fallen Order as well. This guy as this guy in Baldur's Gate 3. And then this guy as Clive from FF16. Well, Yuri Lowenthal is obviously very popular, but he's also being nominated for basically his third appearance as the same character. Well, fourth, if you want to count the not related to the current franchise, like Marvel Midnight Suns game that was made by 2K and is a completely different game from the Sony games, and also but he voiced the character in that, and then of course he was also in the Spider-Verse movie for like a brief cameo earlier this year. But anyways, my best guess is probably going to be Idris Elba, just because he's Idris Elba. It's either going to be that or Yuri. But in my, that at least that's what I'm going to say. But I'm going to lean on Idris Elba simply because Yuri Lowenthal is kind of a like we've like, for all I know, he was nominated for this category in 2018. So I don't know. Idris Elba as the guy from Phantom Liberty or whatever. We'll go with that. If it's not him, it'll probably be Yuri Lowenthal, but I don't know. I'm just complete shot in the dark there. Best audio design: Alan Wake 2, Hi-Fi Rush, Dead Space Remake, Spider-Man 2, and Resident Evil 4. I can only speak for Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush's music is good, but I don't really have anything to say about it. It doesn't really stand out in my mind. It's just like, yeah, it's like this rock music, and it fits really well with what the game is. It's just, I have nothing to say about it. Like, ironically, of all the things about Hi-Fi Rush I like, the music is kind of just like, yeah, it's there. It's good, but, like, there's nothing to say about it whatsoever. It's just kind of, yeah, it's like, rock music or whatever, and it vibes with the stages, whatever. Like, I have nothing to say about it whatsoever. So, I don't know. I guess Hi-Fi Rush, but really it could be any of them. I got nothing to say. And I mean, the Spider-Man soundtracks are good too, but I don't know. I don't know. It could be any of them. I got nothing really to say on that one, honestly. Best score in music: Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 16, Hi-Fi Rush, and Tears of the Kingdom. This one could really be anything. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I already said what I said about Hi-Fi Rush, Okay, but then again, audio design and score and music are not the same thing. Okay, audio design, I think Hi-Fi Rush does well at that, but the actual music itself, I don't have much to say about. Tears of the Kingdom. Well, ironically, I actually haven't heard that much of Tears of the Kingdom's music, even though I've played like 150, 200 hours of that game. And I still haven't finished it, by the way. I need to get around to it. I'm close to the end. I have just like a couple more side quests and then like the final boss, basically. But I'm mostly done with the game. But anyways, because like the Breath of the Wild soundtrack, when that came out, is a soundtrack that was definitely divisive to some extent, because it wasn't a real, quote, soundtrack like the rest of the games. It was more like subtle ambiance, but it did that very well. Like just walking around the world and just hearing those like subtle little, whatever you want to call it, just the subtle little, the ambiance. It worked. Like the Breath of the Wild soundtrack isn't, for the most part, a, quote, real soundtrack, but it works really well for the kind of game that it is. And Tears of the Kingdom is basically just more of that. But again, like the rest of Tears of the Kingdom, it has the disadvantage of being the second installment. So, and not the first. So the impact is not as big, because we've already seen it before. This is a whole thing we'll get to later when we talk about Game of the Year. But yeah, so I don't know. Again, it really could be any of them. I don't know. I haven't heard the soundtracks for the other 3 games, only Hi-Fi Rush, and even Tears of the Kingdom, I haven't heard that many of the new ones, because I played most of Tears of the Kingdom, with headphones listening to YouTube videos, so I didn't actually hear most of the new music when it played. I do have the soundtrack on the computer, though, so maybe of course I know the main theme, do 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 do. Obviously I know the main theme. I know a couple of the others, but I actually don't know. I actually have not heard myself most of the new tracks, and I don't even know how many new tracks there are. I can't imagine there's that many new ones, considering how much Tears of the Kingdom is based on Breath of the Wild as is, but anyways. Point is, best score music, I don't know, any of them. I got nothing really to say about that. Best art direction, Alan Wake, Hi-Fi Rush, Tears of the Kingdom, Liza P, Mario Wonder. Now, this is the category that I think Hi-Fi Rush should win. The art style in that game is fantastic. I have absolutely no complaints about it whatsoever. It looks so vibrant, so clean, so nice. It's great. It should win that category. Will it win? I think even putting my bias aside for Hi-Fi Rush, it would probably still win. I don't know. But hey, this is predictions and hopes. So my hope is that it wins Best Art Direction. I think it absolutely deserves that. Hi-Fi Rush is a beautiful, gorgeous game. Not in the sense that it's a graphical showcase, but just because it looks so dang good. Again, not from a sheer graphics and texture, but just the art style, that cartoony, eye-popping art style just looks so, so, so good. So I think it should win Best Art Direction. That's the category it should win, this best art direction. I think it absolutely deserves that. Plus, it has the whole, Spider-Verse style, slowing down the frame rate for certain things. That also kind of adds to it. But yeah, Hi-Fi Rush is a gorgeous-looking game. It should absolutely win Best Art Direction. I mean, obviously, Alan Wake 2, has, its ray tracing and all that stuff. And, of course, Tears of the Kingdom has its iconic art style, too. And Mario Wonder, of course, changed things up from the now sterile New Super Mario Bros. Aesthetic to some extent. But Hi-Fi Rush is definitely, and I can't speak to Lies of P, but Hi-Fi Rush is definitely the one. That's the one I want to see win at the very least. Best narrative: Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Phantom Liberty, Final Fantasy 16, Spider-Man 2. I have absolutely no clue, and I got nothing to really say for best narrative because this entirely relies on me having played any of these games, and I haven't yet. So any of them, I guess. Best game direction. Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Tears of the Kingdom, Spider-Man 2, Wonder. Again, this is one I really can't answer without having played the games. I mean, of course I've played Tears of the Kingdom, but I don't really got much to say in terms of game direction for that. It's not even really a category I'm very super intimate with anyway, so I don't know. I got nothing really for that one either. Okay. We've hit the 50-minute mark, and we're only just now talking about Game of the Year, so let's go ahead and get this out of the way. The nominees for Game of the Year are Alan Wake 2 from Remedy, Baldur's Gate 3 from fan favorite Larian Studios, Tears of the Kingdom from Nintendo EPD, of course, Spider-Man 2 from Insomniac, Resident Evil 4 from Capcom, and then Mario Wonder Nintendo EPD. And they specifically say Nintendo EPD to distinguish that it's made by Nintendo internally and not from an external developer. Whereas, Fire Emblem Engage, right, is made by Intelligent Systems but published by Nintendo. Whereas, Mario Wonder and Tears of the Kingdom are made by Nintendo themselves internally. That's why they say Nintendo EPD. But anyways, because EPD is their internal division, so this is the big one. Everything else I just talked about is kind of whatever. This is the one everyone cares about the most. Game of the Year. It's the only one anyone really actually cares about that much. Who's going to win? I think there is only 2 games that have a real, actual chance at winning. Baldur's Gate 3, because it's the clear fan favorite. And, of course, Tears of the Kingdom, because it's also one of the fan favorites. Or at least it was when it first came out this year. And you would probably think that I would pick Tears of the Kingdom. But here's the thing. 1, I haven't played Baldur's Gate 3. I've heard a lot of good things about it. Everyone has been talking about the game non-stop ever since it came out. It's extremely popular. It's the big standout game of 2023 without question. If Game of the Year was strictly a popularity contest, Baldur's Gate 3 would probably win. At least if Reddit or whatever was voting, then it would be Baldur's Gate 3. But of course, the world of gaming is not just Reddit or Twitter or X. What would Joe Schmo vote for? If it was just Joe Schmo, it would probably be Tears of the Kingdom. But honestly, I think both of them have a real shot. Tears of the Kingdom obviously has a very high chance because it's Tears of the Kingdom. It's Zelda. It's one of the biggest games of the year. Obviously, that has a very good chance at winning. But Baldur's Gate 3 also has a really good chance at winning, too. And while I haven't played Baldur's Gate 3, and therefore I can't definitively say 100% that it should or should not win, having played Tears of the Kingdom, which is the only other game that stands any real chance at winning, having not played Baldur's Gate 3, but having played Tears of the Kingdom, I think that between the two, Baldur's Gate 3 deserves Game of the Year more, and here's why. It has nothing to do with Baldur's Gate 3 itself, although it being very popular and very beloved is a part of that, but that's not the main reason why I think it should win. The main reason why I think Baldur's Gate 3 should win is because I don't think Tears of the Kingdom is enough of its own thing to justify being Game of the Year. And this kind of wraps around to a thing that people were talking about before the game came out and people have been talking about after the game came out. And that is how much of Tears of the Kingdom is going to feel like Breath of the Wild? You know, is it going to be a glorified DLC and all that stuff? And while having played 150 plus hours of the game, I can say it is not a glorified DLC. However, while it may not be a, quote, glorified DLC, at least in my opinion, I also don't think the game necessarily is its own game by enough to justify the pinnacle of Game of the Year. Don't get me wrong, Tears of the Kingdom is a good game. It 100% is. This isn't going to be your psych. Tears of the Kingdom is actually the worst game ever. The worst game of the year. Insanely disappointing. But the biggest thing that holds back Tears of the Kingdom from being a game of the year is not the game itself necessarily, although obviously the game has its critiques. But more so because, like I mentioned before, Tears of the Kingdom has the huge downside of being the sequel. If it came out first, it would have a way better chance. But because it is a sequel, and more importantly, a sequel that is very much built on the foundation of its predecessor, it's basically Tears of the Kingdom, even though it's not a DLC. It very much is an extension of its predecessor. It doesn't stand, in my opinion at least, the game does not stand on its own enough to truly be Game of the Year on its own merit. In my opinion, of course. You may disagree. That's totally fine. But even though I did really like Tears of the Kingdom for the most part, and while I obviously have complaints with it, I've had a good time with it for the most part. But it's not its own thing by enough. This is the whole problem. Basically, the entire thing holding back Tears of the Kingdom from being Game of the Year is that it's Breath of the Wild 2 at its core. I mean, of course it is, but that's what it is. It's not its own game by enough. That's the problem, in my opinion at least. It is too much of an extension, even though it's not a DLC. There's enough new stuff in the game that I wouldn't call it a DLC, but it's very much an extension of its previous counterpart at the same time. Think of it like this. I've mentioned this before in streams and stuff. This is something I know I had thought of and other people have thought of before the game came out. But now that we are 6 months after release and people have had time to kind of process their feelings on the game, I can say that while I think Tears of the Kingdom is a great game, it is going to be the Galaxy 2 of Zelda. In the sense that it's a game that's a good game, and most people will agree is a good game, that's arguably better than its predecessor in some ways, but it doesn't stand on its own enough to be mentioned on its own in isolation, disconnected from its predecessor. Think about it this way. When people talk about their favorite Mario games, how many of them say, oh yeah, Galaxy 2 is my favorite Mario game? Most people don't say that. They'll say Galaxy is my favorite, or they'll say the Galaxy games 1 and 2 are my favorite. They never mention Galaxy 2 on its own most of the time. And you want to know why? It's not because it's a bad game. It's not. It's a good game. It's because it's not its own game by enough to justify being brought up on its own without talking about the original. And I think Tears of the Kingdom is going to end up being in that same kind of thing where most people will agree 5, 10, 15 years from now that it's a good game, but it doesn't stand on its own by enough to be like, yeah, Tears of the Kingdom is a great Zelda game or a great game. If this gets into the whole debate of, is Breath of the Wild / Tears of the Kingdom a good game or a good Zelda game? That's a whole other conversation. But good game but a bad Zelda game. That whole debate that's been happening for the last 5 or so years, that's a whole other conversation. But the point is, I think Tears of the Kingdom is going to be like that, where people are going to be like, yeah, Breath of the Wild was such a great game. It was a big shift in the series. It did so many new things for the series and was a really good, solid game. But will they say that about Tears of the Kingdom on its own? I mean, sure, they might say it right now because Tears of the Kingdom is still relatively new. But 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years from now? Will they say Tears of the Kingdom, or will they say Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom? Or just Breath of the Wild? I feel like, as far as sheer public impact, Breath of the Wild is higher than Tears of the Kingdom, and it always will be because it came first. And did all the things that Tears of the Kingdom did before it did. So it will be the game that sticks in people's... Like, when people have been comparing other games to Breath of the Wild for the past 6 years. And they will continue to compare it to Breath of the Wild and not Tears of the Kingdom unless they specifically have the new crafting features. Because most of what Tears of the Kingdom does well is stuff that Breath of the Wild did first. So, you get the point. Point is, long story short, I think Baldur's Gate should win. One, because it's the popular game, which I know is a bit of a cop-out. Like, oh, it's way too easy. Popularity doesn't equal quality, yeah, whatever. I think it should partly win because it's the popular game. Kind of like how Elden Ring, I thought, should have won last year because it was the popular game, and it did. Even though I had no personal stake in it. But I also don't think Tears of the Kingdom should win just because it's too much... Okay, here's the easiest way I could put it. It's too derivative of Breath of the Wild to deserve being a Game of the Year in its own right. Breath of the Wild winning Game of the Year made sense because it was the big change in the series. But Tears of the Kingdom is the exact opposite. It's very derivative. And I know most of the time people say derivative, they mean that in a bad way. And it's not necessarily a bad way. Again, Tears of the Kingdom is a good game. But it's too much like its predecessor to deserve being on its own pedestal. Again, it's the Galaxy 2 of Zelda. Good game, but not unique enough to be its own thing. That's my take anyway. Obviously, again, if you disagree, by all means, you can let me know why you think it deserves to win even still down below. I'm totally down for that. Seriously, I'm not joking. I'd be totally down to hear what you guys have to say, and when it comes to like whether Tears of the Kingdom should win or not, or whether or not it's unique enough to win. By all means, let me know down below. I'm serious. I genuinely would like to see that. But personally, while Tears of the Kingdom is a great game and all, it's the Galaxy 2 of Zelda. I wouldn't say Galaxy 2 should win anything. So why would I say Tears of the Kingdom should win as well? Now, I will say this. If Tears of the Kingdom had come out later, then I think my opinion would probably be a little different. If Tears of the Kingdom had come out in November, as opposed to May, I probably would have been way more, oh yeah, of course I want to win Game of the Year. Because we would have been a lot closer to when the game came out. But because we're 6 months out, my opinion is different. So yeah. We've been talking about this, just this one little topic for like 10 minutes. You get the point. I'm just dragging this part out. Game of the Year, I think should be Baldur's Gate 3, because Tears of the Kingdom isn't unique enough on its own to justify the spot, in my opinion. And we'll just leave it at that. Again, by all means, let me know down below how you feel about that. I'm totally down to hear what you guys have to say. To the 10 or so people that actually listen to this. And again, if you're still listening an hour in, then thank you for listening. Alrighty. Now we've talked about all the awards, which I wasn't even planning to talk about all of them. I just felt like it because, hey, I got the Wikipedia page up. Why not go through all of them? Now let's talk about the thing that people actually care about the awards for more than anything else, the announcements. Again, the Game Awards is basically a mini E3 at this point, for better or for worse. So, what do we know is going to be there? So, in terms of stuff that we know 100% will be there, we have new stuff for Baldur's Gate 3, probably the Xbox version release date being one of them. We have something from Dead by Daylight. We have a new Fortnite game mode. Also, there was like this trailer they put out for like the Game Awards that had like Jeff in Fortnite, and it was kind of weird. I don't know if they actually sold him on the store, but they made a model, like Epic made a model of Jeff Keighley in Fortnite, so that's kind of weird, but yeah. So new Fortnite stuff, which has been at the Game Awards for years, so it's not really surprising. A new Guilty Gear Strive DLC, new stuff for Warframe, something from Sega, specifically Sega itself, not Atlas, although we will talk about Atlas, because Atlas does have something as well. The hint seemingly is something from Virtua Fighter, either like that new arcade port that was announced a little while ago, or maybe maybe even the elusive Virtua Fighter 6, but I don't know. Something from Virtua Fighter seems to be kind of the thing people are talking about, but it could be anything, I guess, but the hint seems to be that it's at the very least fighting game related, therefore probably being Virtua Fighter, because that's kind of Sega's, at least it was their fighting game series for a while, but anyways. Then, talking about Atlas, we have Metaphor ReFantazio. Now, this is something that we just got announced, earlier today. So, that, honestly, I'm a little surprised, because I wouldn't have expected that. I mean, that's the only game that would make sense for them to really show, because, of course, Tactica is out, and Reload is coming out in February, and we pretty much, we don't know everything about Reload, but, Reload is... Reload is not a show at the Game Awards kind of game, because it's coming out too soon. If it was coming out in, November next year, then sure, you could have a big trailer for it. But, there's no real point in having a, quote, world premiere, even though they're not doing the world premiere thing anymore, like I mentioned earlier. But, there's no point in doing a big trailer for Reload when we've already gotten a ton of trailers for it over the last, couple of months anyway. There was even a new one that came out today for Shinji, I think. But they've been doing those trailers for all the different characters and stuff. And I haven't seen all of them. I've seen a couple of them. Oh yeah, by the way, so remember earlier this year how we got that leaked Sega 2021 thing that had Sonic Frontiers, a new Jet Set Radio, and Persona 3 Remake, and we had that animation of Yukari shooting the bow? Well, guess what? In the Yukari trailer they put out a month or two ago, which I only had just seen a week ago because I wasn't watching any of those trailers, they literally have that exact animation in there. So to everyone that was like, oh, well, okay, Persona 3 Remake was real, but that Sega leak thing was fake. Nope, because it's the exact same animation. So that 2021 era Yukari thing was 100% real. Because they literally have that exact same animation in the actual game that we saw in the Yukari trailer from a month or two ago. But anyways. But yeah, Metaphor ReFantazio is basically the other big game coming out from Atlas next year. Of course, we have Reload in February, and then we're going to have Metaphor, which is the long-awaited Project ReFantasy from the dream team of Hoshino, Soejima, and Meguro, the guys behind Persona 3, 4, and 5. They're working at studio... Well, okay, Meguro's not actually at Atlas anymore. He's now a freelancer, but he's still working on the game. And then, of course, Sojiro and Hoshino are still at Atlas, but Hoshino is running Studio Zero, the team behind the Catherine games, or Catherine game, because there's only one game aside from the port, or the re-release that had Rin, which was full body. But anyways, point is, Metaphor ReFantazio is Atlas's big new game, not counting Reload next year. So... But I don't know, maybe. But then again, we had the Persona 4 Arena Ultimax port at the Game Awards in 2020. So was it 2020 or was it 2021? I think it was 2021 when that happened. Yeah, because that was a part of the 25th anniversary or whatever. So I guess having something Atlas related at the game. I mean, not counting the Joker. The Joker reveal doesn't count because that's not an Atlas reveal. That's a Nintendo reveal. So that doesn't count. If we're talking strictly about Atlas themselves, then yeah, we had the Persona 4 Arena Ultimax thing, so I guess it's not impossible. And of course we had Persona 5 Strikers as well. That was supposed to be a Game Awards announcement, but then they got leaked a week early and it kind of ruined it, but yeah. But that was also a localization though. But anyway, so not a brand new announcement. But anyways, point is, Metaphor ReFantazio is going to be here. That's pretty cool. I mean, of all the games that we know are going to be here, this is probably the one I want to see the most. It's not Persona 6, but it still looks pretty cool from what we saw at the Xbox event earlier this year. It's going to be one of the big games from Atlas, so I'm definitely looking forward to it. It looks pretty neat. Yeah, so that'd be cool to see that. Then finally, for stuff that's confirmed, Microsoft is going to have something here. Now, of course, famously last year, despite the fact that Phil Spencer was literally in the front row, they didn't reveal anything. But they did say they're going to have something here. Now, my guess is it's probably going to be Hellblade again. Hellblade's been kind of a staple of Xbox reveals for a while. It was also revealed at the Game Awards in 2019 alongside the Series X, but Hellblade still doesn't have a release date to my knowledge. Maybe it's 2024? I don't even remember. I know they showed off a new trailer for it earlier this year at the Xbox event. I don't remember if they had a release date for it. Either way, just something for Hellblade 2 is my best guess. Maybe there'll be something random and out of nowhere, but that's my safe guess for what Microsoft has. It's probably going to be we'll show off Hellblade 2 again because we've been showing that off for a while, and then we'll maybe finally get a concrete release date or something. I don't know. That's my best guess as to what they would show. I'm not sure what else they'd really show. They just had a Halo update recently, so it's not going to be that. They're not going to show off they're not going to show off anything for Forza. At least I doubt it anyway. It's not big enough, in my opinion. Gears 6, I guess they could show that off, but I feel like that's something that they would save for an Xbox event. But then again, the age of saving an X game for an event is kind of died a while ago. That's a whole video I could talk about. I legit have a video I want to do called The Day E3 Died, and then like in parentheses for Nintendo. That's like legit a whole video I want to do about how, like, when did E3 die for them specifically? Because I feel like it could be at different dates depending on how you look at it. But that's a whole other conversation. But anyways, so yeah, Microsoft is going to have something. My best guess is it's going to be either an update for an existing game. I mean, I guess Starfield could technically be a part of that, but my best guess is like it's probably just going to be Hellblade. That's my best guess. As for rumors/speculation, we have Ragnarok DLC. That's been rumored for a while, that Ragnarok would get some kind of big expansion or something. Of course, last year we got the reveal of Burning Shores for Horizon Forbidden West, so it's totally possible that Sony will throw the Game Awards a bone again this year with God of War this time, so I could see that. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, I'm just saying I could totally see it. Then we have Beyond Good and Evil 20th Anniversary Remaster. This, of course, was famously leaked recently, and because of that, Ubisoft just had to be like, okay, guys, yes, it's real, it's coming next year, we'll share more details about it eventually. I think, a lot of people were speculating that it was going to be announced at the Game Awards anyway, so, yeah. They'll probably be like, yeah, here's the trailer for it. Yeah, there it is. You guys already know about it. But, yeah. FF7 Rebirth new trailer. Now, I know I just talked about how Reload is, like, too close to deserve getting it, to really make sense to do a new trailer, but the difference between that and Rebirth is that Rebirth has had way fewer trailers than Reload has. Reload has had a trailer, like, every week practically for the past couple of months, whereas FF7 has gotten like some trailers here and there, and we've seen more and more about the game as it's gone on, but I think it would make sense to do maybe like one big final trailer at the Game Awards. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but remember, earlier this year we got FF7 Rebirth at the Summer Games Fest, so hey, Jeff was able to score FF7 once, maybe he can score it again. I don't know, I'm kind of 50-50 on whether we get a Rebirth trailer or not, but I could totally see it, but I also wouldn't be shocked if we don't get it either. And finally, Death Stranding 2. I mean, it's Jeff and Kojima. There's nothing else to say. I mean, Death Stranding 2 was literally announced at the Game Awards like a year or two ago, so it makes perfect sense that they would show it here. It's not guaranteed, but, like, there's a pretty good chance. Again, it's Jeff and Kojima. I think the Jeff Kojima dynamic is a bit overblown, but there is some truth to it. I mean, it makes sense that it would be here. Because, again, Jeff and Kojima are, like, best buds. They have been for a while, so. I mean, there's also that Xbox game that Kojima's working with, and maybe that'd be like the double twist, right? Well, guess what? We're gonna have Kojima and an Xbox thing here, but it's not gonna be the things that you expect them to show. It's not gonna be Hellblade, and it's not gonna be Death Stranding. It's gonna be that new like Xbox game that Kojima's working on with Microsoft or something. And that's not gonna be here. That's probably far off. We're not gonna see that for like another year or two, probably. But yeah, Death Stranding 2 would make sense to be here. And finally, an hour and 13 minutes in, let's get to the bit everyone really is here for. You're not. Let's be real here. You're not here to hear me talk about the awards. You're not here to even hear me talk about FF7 or Death Stranding or whatever. No. You are here because of one simple thing. Now let's talk about it. And that is, will Nintendo have anything this year at the Game Awards? And my answer to that is going to be a fairly solid, if not fully solid, no. Why? There's a couple reasons. The first is, and I know people have talked about this, but ever since, but for the last couple of years, Nintendo has kind of downplayed their role at the Game Awards. Sure, they've had stuff. The last big one being, of course, Sephiroth in 2020, but that was also 3 years ago. They didn't have anything for 2021, and then in 2022, the only thing we got was like Fire Emblem DLC. So, and this year, Tears of the Kingdom is done. Mario Wonder is done. We're not getting DLC for Tears of the Kingdom either, so that's not going to be here. And Mario Wonder's out. Mario RPG is out. We already know about Princess Peach and the Thousand Year Door remake and all that other stuff. What can they show that's for the current system? That's the big thing that's holding them back from even if they wanted to show something new. What would they even show? Because as far as I can tell, we basically know the 2024 lineup for the current system, because, and again, this is a whole video that I need to get around to doing. I'm gonna do a video about this at some point because I basically have to. But the Switch is on its last legs. The Switch is about to enter its final year as the main Nintendo console. Pretty much everyone has agreed at this point that the Switch 2 is going to be launching by the end of 2024. I don't think it's going to be early. I think it's going to be late. I think it's going to be November. Maybe September, but November is going to be my safe date. November 2024. And we already know about a couple of remakes, Princess Peach, and I think 1 or 2 ports. But that's about it. Most of the 2024 lineup is ports and remakes, and that's because that's what happens at the end of a Nintendo generation a lot of the time. Not all the time, but it tends to be a pattern that we've seen where, by the time you reach the end of the generation, they start to rely more on ports. And I know that during the entire Switch generation, they've relied on ports because they had so many Wii U games they could port over because no one had a Wii U except for me and you. Or, well, assuming that the 10 people watching this actually had Wii U's. But hey, I had a Wii U, 2012 even, not day one, but Christmas 2012, so I had it basically the entire generation. But anyways, most people didn't have a Wii U, so they could bank on a lot of their Wii U games to fill in the dead gaps between new proper Switch titles. Although they won't be able to rely on that on the Switch 2, because everyone had a Switch and everyone already played those games, so they won't be able to do that whole thing again. Again, that's a whole other conversation we could save for a Switch 2 video, but point is, well, obviously, there's probably going to be 1 or 2 more games for the Switch that we don't know about that's going to come out next year. I think we know probably the general gist. We got Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, Dark Moon HD. We got the first Mario and Donkey Kong remake. We got the Thousand Year Door remake, which I'm looking forward to because Thousand Year Door is one of my favorite games. We have, Princess Peach Showtime. We have the Splatoon 3 DLC. And that's about it. I'm probably forgetting 1 or 2 games, but there's not that much outside of ports and remakes. And that's because, shocker, the Switch 2 is coming out next year, and shocker, they're going to be saving any remaining big games they have in development for that new system. Which brings us to the one game that would stand any chance at showing up here. And it's the one game that everyone has been talking about to be at the Game Awards for the past 4 years. And it has never happened. So it's not going to be here. But it's not going to not be here just because it's never been there in the past. It's also because it wouldn't make sense to show. Again, this goes back to the whole thing of what would they show. And a part of the problem is, one, there's nothing really left for the current Switch that makes sense for them to have there because nothing is big enough to justify being there. But again, whether it's something has to be big enough to justify being there is a whole other conversation. But the one big game left for the current Switch that we know about that's new, that isn't a remake, is Metroid Prime 4, which was announced all the way back at E3 2017. It's been in development the entire generation, even got reset once in 2019, of course, from its original developer, which was rumored to be Bandai Namco, to, of course, its original developer, which is Retro Studios. And they've been working on the game in the background for the past 4 or 5 years. And in my opinion, it has been more than long enough for us to see something. But I know we won't see it for one simple reason. And again, this is by no means a hot take or unpopular opinion, but this is by no means an original opinion, I should say. But the reason why we're not going to see Prime 4 here is not really because we haven't seen it before at the Game Awards, although that is a part of it. It's because it is pretty dang obvious at this point that the only reason we haven't seen it yet, despite the fact that it has been more than long, even with the development reset in 2019, it has been more than long enough for us to see the game at this point. There is no reason as to why they couldn't give us even just a 6-second blip, but they haven't. And you want to know why? It's because they're saving the game for the Switch 2. Now, to be clear, the game will still come out on the Switch. It's going to be like Breath of the Wild and Twilight Princess, where the game is cross-gen. It'll come out on the Switch, but it's going to be promoted and marketed as a Switch 2 game. Like with Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild was announced for the Wii U, but by the time it actually came out, it was a Switch game. It was all about the Switch, because it was a Switch launch title. And while I'm not saying Prime 4 is going to be a Switch 2 launch title, I'm not sure if it's big enough to justify that. They might wait a couple months on that one, but that's a whole other conversation too. But the point is, Prime 4 is going to be one of their big Switch 2 titles, and that's why they haven't shown it at this point. It's not because they can't, like in terms of we're not ready to show it. No, they're ready to show it. It's been 4 years. There's no excuse I'm going to buy that they can't show us something. But the reason why they won't show us it is because it's being saved as a big Switch 2 marketing thing. So we're not going to see that game until they announce the Switch 2. And of course, the Switch 2, shocker, is not going to be here because, like with GTA 6, which by the way, we got that announced recently, and that video, man, oh man, I mean, we all knew GTA 6 was going to get insane numbers, but for context, the GTA 5 trailer from 12 years ago, the reveal trailer from 2011, has like 100 million views, 105 million views, I think. The GTA 6 reveal trailer from 2 days ago, that was actually leaked beforehand. But I was gonna stream that, but like when Rockstar put up their little like vaporwave color, like, hey, tune in at like 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for the first trailer, right? I was gonna stream that because it's GTA 6. It's like the biggest game ever. I can't not stream that. But then Rockstar just released the trailer early because someone leaked it. And now it's like, okay, well, now I'm not going to bother because, like, what's the point? But yeah, that trailer has, like, again, GTA 5 trailer, 105 million views in 12 years. GTA 6 reveal trailer, 115 to 120 million at the time of recording. In 2 days. That is, like, everyone, it's like, yeah, GTA is a big thing, but it's not like as big as people make it out to be. No. GTA really is that big. GTA 5 reveal from 12 years ago has less views than the GTA 6 reveal trailer from 2 days ago. That is how insanely pent up the demand for this game is. They have made us wait so long that like the views on, like, my thought was, oh, it'll get like 20 million views in the first like day or two, and then it'll get to like 50 million views in the first week. But no, it blew past 100 million views and is now the most popular video on the entire Rockstar channel in 2 days. 2 days. That is how pent up the demand for this game has been. So I can safely say right now, and this is, again, not a hot take by any means, or not an original. I keep saying hot take. Hot take and unoriginal is a different thing. This is by no means an original opinion, but 2025, no matter what game possibly comes out that year, GTA 5 will be GTA 6 will be the biggest game of the year. Shocker, I know. Original, I know. But it is. I mean, see the view counter. The view counter alone proves that game is going to be the biggest game of the year, no matter what comes out. And even if it's not the biggest game it's going to be, of course I'm going to play it. Are you kidding me? Like everyone else. Of course I am. I like GTA. I played the crap out of GTA 5 back in the day. I'll be playing the new one, obviously. And what's funny, and this is a whole conversation I could save for a different video, but 2025, there's a very real chance that GTA 6 could be launching alongside, like, the next Smash. Oh man, that would be crazy. What if they pulled like a Doom Eternal Animal Crossing situation where they come out on the same day? You know, it's not I don't think they would do that. I think Nintendo is not insane. They know every publisher is going to want to stay as far away from GTA 6 on the release calendar as they possibly can. No matter how big or how popular the game. Look, I love Smash. It's my favorite series, but I'm not stupid. They can't launch Smash on the same day or even in the same time span as GTA 6. It won't even stand a chance. It'll get destroyed. I mean, I know they're two different types of games, but you get what I mean. Like, it's not even close. Oh, man. But, again, that's a whole that's a whole discussion, you know, but either way, like we might see the next Smash come out, because I'm guessing the next Smash is going to be like 2025. It won't be. It's not going to be a launch title, although that would be pretty awesome. Smash game for launch. We haven't had that since like Melee. Well, Melee wasn't a launch game, but it came out like a month later. I don't know. Whatever. You get the point. I'm getting way off track. Point is, going back to Prime 4. Prime 4 is not going to be here because it's being saved for the Switch 2, and they're not revealing the Switch 2 until next year. That's my main point. So. Long story short, when it comes to this whole Nintendo topic, I don't think they're gonna have anything of significance. They might do their little like Nintendo Switch has games type thing, like they did in 2019 and 2021, where they show a little like sizzle reel of upcoming games in 2024. But that's it. Or maybe like a very minor thing that doesn't really matter that much. They're not gonna have side order, because side order is not big enough. And look, I like Splatoon. I like Splatoon. But like, Splatoon's not big enough to justify being Nintendo's like thing that they have that year. But then again, they had Fire Emblem last year, so I don't know. Point is, do not go into the Game Awards expecting jack from Nintendo. We're not getting anything. Not of any significance at the very least. I just don't see it. What would they even show? If the Switch 2 was revealed already, then sure, they could show stuff, but it's not yet. So what can they possibly show that makes sense to show? Because it's not going to be Prime 4, because they're waiting for the Switch 2 to show that off again. So, yeah. Don't expect anything Nintendo related. If we get something cool, then like if we get Prime 4 somehow, cool, but I really, really doubt it. And I don't think we're going to get anything else either. No side order, no port, no Zelda port, like the elusive, never going to happen Twilight Princess Wind Waker thing that is so not... That is so... It's been rumored for so long and it still hasn't happened. It's not happening. I really doubt it. And it certainly wouldn't be at the Game Awards, so... Point is, we're not getting anything from Nintendo. If we get something cool, but do not go in expecting anything. We're not going to get anything from them. And with that being said, I mean, what did I say earlier? Like, oh yeah, maybe this video will be an hour and 30 minutes long. Well, it's an hour and 27 minutes, so... Yeah. If you stuck around to the end, then thank you very much for listening and sticking by. I really appreciate it. And yeah, so, that's what I gotta say about the Game Awards, I guess, or the predictions for the Game Awards anyway. So yeah, let me know down below. What games do you want to see win? Again, what are your thoughts on my whole little Tears of the Kingdom discussion I did, whether or not that game should win or not? And do you think we're gonna see anything from Nintendo or not? Again, I don't think we're going to. I just can't see it. But maybe you got some hope. Maybe you just got that gut feeling that no, we're gonna get something. Something. By all means, let me know. And as for me, well, stay tuned, of course, like I do every year at this point. Stay tuned for the stream I'll be doing for all two of you that may be tuned into that. Realistically, probably zero. I don't know if I've ever had anyone show up to a Game Award. No. I have had people show up to a Game Award stream before. Not many, but they have happened. I don't know. Either way. For those of you that do care, I will be doing a Game Awards stream tomorrow, of course, so stay tuned for that. If you want to, watch that with me, then by all means, I'd appreciate it, but I'm not really expecting anyone to show up. But, hey, maybe after the fact they'll get some views, we'll see. And that's it. That's all I really got to say. thank you for sticking by this hour and 30-minute discussion that did not need to be this long whatsoever, but I made it this long anyway because, let's be honest, I really like to talk. I do like to talk a lot. I really do. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, so again, let me know your thoughts down below and who you want to see win and all that stuff. And stay tuned tomorrow for the stream. And with that being said, this is Logan59XP. And I'll see you guys next time.